I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, actually, don't close them if you're driving, but
Yeah, please keep your eyes on the road.
right, safety first. But picture this in your mind. It is February 2026.
And we are looking at the waters of the Persian Gulf.
Exactly. It's hot, the air is thick,
Yeah.
and the water is incredibly crowded right now.
Very crowded.
There is a massive United States naval force deployed just off the Iranian coast. And they are operating on what the military calls a hair trigger alert.
They are anticipating a potential attack.
Yeah, and into this absolute powder keg, we just got to look at a piece of intelligence that effectively strikes a match.
It really is the definition of a high-pressure environment right now. And the intel we're looking at for this deep dive isn't just some vague threat. It's practically a receipt.
Right, we aren't talking about internet rumors or vague chatter here. We are digging into breaking developments from our source material that Iran is on the verge of finalizing a major deal.
A purchase of advanced supersonic missiles from China.
And look, I know we hear about arms deals all the time, but our mission today is to explain why this specific deal is so different.
It changes the entire board.
It really does. We need to understand the hardware, this specific missile called the CM-302, and why the mere mention of it coming into the theater changes the math for the U.S. Navy.
And for the Trump administration, especially following the June war.
Exactly. And just to be completely clear on where this is coming from, because obviously sources matter, this is coming from multiple individuals.
6 individuals, to be exact, who are familiar with the negotiations.
Right, including security officials and sources who have been briefed directly by the Iranian government. So the signal-to-noise ratio here is very high.
This is a real thing that has happened.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I want to start with the hardware itself. Because when I hear the word missile, I usually just think of, a rocket that goes boom.
Sure, the standard ballistic arc.
Yeah, but the sources are treating this CM-302 like it is an entirely different species of weapon. What are we actually looking at?
To understand the concern here, you really have to understand the engineering. The CM-302 is the export version of China's YJ-12 missile.
Okay.
And in naval warfare circles, this isn't just another missile. It has a reputation. It's known as a carrier killer.
Which sounds a bit like marketing hype, honestly. Carrier killer.
I know it sounds like a movie title, but in this case, it is not hype at all. It comes down to 2 specific variables that create a total nightmare for defense systems.
Which are?
Velocity and trajectory. So first, let's talk about the speed. It is supersonic. We are talking about speeds that can exceed Mach 3.
Okay, hold on. Let's put that into context for the listener.
Yeah.
The speed of sound is Mach 1. So this thing is moving at 3 times the speed of sound.
Which is roughly a kilometer every single second.
That's incredibly fast.
It is. Imagine something moving that fast toward you. But here's the catch. Speed alone isn't actually the main problem.
It isn't.
No, because the U.S. Navy has defense systems that can shoot down fast things. They practice that all the time. The real problem is where it flies.
And trajectory.
Right. This missile is what's called a sea skimmer.
A sea skimmer. It sounds a bit like a bird, but I'm guessing it is significantly less peaceful.
Much less. It means the missile is designed to cruise just meters above the surface of the water. And this is where the actual physics of the Earth works against the ship trying to defend itself.
How does that work?
Well, ships use radar to see threats coming. And radar works on a line-of-sight basis.
Like a flashlight.
Exactly like a flashlight. So if a missile is coming at you from 30,000 feet up in the air, your radar can see it from hundreds of miles away.
Because there's nothing in the way.
Right. You have time, you can scramble jets, you can fire long-range interceptors, you can get countermeasures ready, you have actual minutes to react.
But if it is skimming the waves?
It is hiding behind the curvature of the Earth. The physical horizon literally blocks the radar waves from seeing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so a ship's radar might not pick up a sea skimmer until it physically pops up over the horizon line.
Which is how far away?
Usually about 20 to 30 kilometers away.
Okay, let me just do the math on that real quick. If it's 30 kilometers away, and you said it's traveling at 1 kilometer per second.
You have 30 seconds, maybe less depending on the sea state.
30 seconds total.
Total.
Yeah.
In that 30-second window, the ship's automated defense systems have to detect the threat, identify it as an incoming missile and not just a weird wave or a flock of birds.
Track it,
lock onto it, and fire a defensive weapon to essentially hit a bullet with another bullet.
That is terrifying.
And to make it even worse, the CM-302 is designed to perform a terminal maneuver.
What does that mean?
It zigzags. Right before impact, it makes sudden, unpredictable movements to throw off those very defense systems we just talked about.
So you have a supersonic object popping out of nowhere, screaming in at wavetop level and weaving around like a boxer,
Exactly.
which really explains the reaction from Danny Citrinovich.
The former Israeli intelligence officer.
Yes, he's cited in the source material, and he really didn't mince words about this at all.
No, he didn't. He called this weapon a game changer. And he specifically noted that these missiles are very difficult to intercept.
Right, and when you have a former intel officer, someone who has literally seen every kind of weapon system out there, using phrases like game changer, you really have to pay attention.
You do, because he is basically saying that the current defensive shield the U.S. relies on might not be a guarantee against this specific threat.
And what about the range on these things? Because if it's super fast, but it can only fly 10 miles, that's a very different strategic problem.
The range is significant. It's approximately 290 kilometers.
Which is what, roughly 180 miles?
About that, yes.
That is a massive bubble.
It is a massive bubble. If you park a battery of these CM-302 missiles on the Iranian coast, you are effectively drawing a 180-mile keep-out zone in the water.
You're telling the U.S. Navy, if you cross this invisible line, you are in the kill box.
Exactly. It fundamentally challenges the assumption of safety. For decades, the U.S. could park an aircraft carrier pretty much anywhere it wanted to, and it was considered largely invulnerable.
And this missile threatens to end that entire era.
It does.
That is a really sobering thought, but here's the thing that still puzzles me a bit as we go through these sources.
What's that?
Iran has a huge domestic missile program already. We see parades of their rockets all the time. They've been building and engineering this stuff internally for decades.
They have a very robust domestic capability.
Right. So why go to China? Why spend the money and, frankly, the political capital to import this specific system now?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And to answer it, we really have to look at the timeline provided in the sources.
Okay.
The sources say these negotiations actually started at least 2 years ago, but they were moving very slowly. It was basically just another potential defense contract being tossed around.
Until something changed.
Until something violently accelerated the process.
The catalyst.
Yes, the June War.
All right. June of 2025. I feel like we all lived through 10 years of breaking news in that one single month.
Certainly felt like it.
Let's refresh the listener's memory on that briefly, because it really is the key to understanding the why now of this missile deal.
So it started as a conflict between Israel and Iran. The sources refer to it as the 12-day war.
It was incredibly short, but incredibly intense.
Very intense. But the critical variable, the thing that really spooked Tehran and changed their calculus, was that the United States didn't just sit back and watch from the sidelines.
The U.S. joined in?
Briefly but decisively, the U.S. joined that conflict.
There were major bombing campaigns.
Everyone's. The U.S. Air Force and Navy conducted strikes. And crucially for our topic today, Iran's domestic air defenses and their existing naval deterrents completely failed to stop those strikes.
They couldn't keep the planes away, and they couldn't threaten the ships launching them.
Exactly. So the takeaway in Tehran was immediate and harsh. What we have built ourselves isn't enough.
It was a massive wake-up call for them.
It was. The negotiations with China for these CM-302 missiles sped up significantly right after that conflict concluded.
Because they realized their current capabilities might not deter the U.S. if there is a round two.
Right. They feel a desperate, immediate need to upgrade their strike capabilities.
There's actually a quote from an Iranian foreign ministry official in the sources that I think really sums up that mindset perfectly.
Which one?
It's worded almost like a bureaucratic memo, but when you read between the lines, it sounds quite urgent. He said, Iran has military and security agreements with its allies, and now is the right time to make use of them.
It is a very pragmatic, almost blunt statement. He is basically admitting that their domestic military industry cannot produce a supersonic sea skimmer fast enough to match the threat they are facing right now.
They can't wait 5 years for research and development.
No, they need an off-the-shelf solution immediately to keep the Americans at bay. So they are cashing in their diplomatic chips with their allies.
Which brings us perfectly to the other major player in this drama, China. We know from history that China generally loves to play the long game. They usually try to stay completely out of the messy middle of Middle Eastern conflicts.
They prefer economic ties over military entanglements, usually.
Exactly. So selling these highly advanced missiles to Iran right now, with a U.S. naval task force sitting right off the coast, That feels incredibly provocative.
It is highly provocative, and it tells us something very important about Beijing's risk tolerance in 2026.
They aren't afraid of the U.S. reaction.
They are calculating that the strategic benefit outweighs the immediate risk. China is strengthening its military ties with Iran explicitly because of the regional tensions, not in spite of them.
That's a huge shift.
It is. And remember, China, Iran, and Russia already conduct annual joint naval exercises together.
Right, but transferring a weapon like the CM-302 is a massive step further than just sailing ships around together for a photo op.
Exactly. This is transferring a day-one war capability. It signals that China is willing to actively arm America's adversaries to dilute U.S. power in the region.
It acts as a strategic distraction for the U.S., doesn't it?
Precisely. If the U.S. Navy has to constantly worry about supersonic sea skimmers in the Persian Gulf, that means there are fewer resources, fewer ships, and far less attention they can commit to places like the South China Sea or Taiwan.
It stretches the U.S. military thin across the globe.
And it's not like there hasn't been friction between the U.S. and China over Iran before. The sources mention a very specific history of U.S. sanctions here.
Right, the sanctions regarding the chemical precursors. Let's talk about that.
So previously, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned several Chinese entities.
For supplying materials to Iran.
Yes, for supplying chemical precursors that are used in Iran's ballistic missile program. Now, China, of course, claimed complete ignorance about how those chemicals were being used.
They always insist they strictly enforce export controls.
They do, and they firmly rejected the U.S. accusations. But regardless of the official denials, the pattern is very clear. There is a steady flow of military-grade technology moving from east to west, and the U.S. is really struggling to plug all those leaks.
Okay, so we have the motive, which is the panic in Tehran following the June war.
Right.
And we have the hardware, this terrifying CM-302 missile.
Right.
But how did they actually get this deal across the finish line?
Right.
Because the U.S. intelligence community watches everything in that region. You can't exactly negotiate a major arms deal over a public video call.
No, evidently you have to do it the old-fashioned way. In person and very quietly.
So what happened?
The sources reveal that during the final phase of these talks, which occurred last summer, senior Iranian officials secretly traveled to China.
And we actually have a specific name from the intelligence, right?
We do. Masoud Orai.
Who is he?
He is Iran's deputy defense minister.
Okay, so a very high-level guy. And this wasn't a public state visit with a banquet and press conference.
Not at all. Orai's visit had not been previously disclosed to the public anywhere. It was strictly a back-channel move.
Which suggests that both Beijing and Tehran wanted to get all the fine details ironed out in secret.
Exactly. The price, the technical specs, the delivery methods they wanted, that all locked down before the West could intervene or create a diplomatic scene at the UN.
Or before the story could leak to the press, which ironically is exactly what is happening right now with this intelligence coming to light.
It's the risk of keeping secrets. Eventually, somebody talks.
Right. So now we really have to talk about the geopolitical reaction. Because we are in February 2026. Donald Trump is back in the White House.
Right.
How is his administration handling this intelligence? Because allowing Iran to arm up like this seems to fly in the face of everything his administration is trying to achieve in the Middle East.
Well, publicly. Complete silence on this specific missile deal so far.
Really? Nothing.
The White House has not directly answered any questions about these CM-302 negotiations. They are neither confirming nor denying the intelligence publicly.
But their broader policy toward Iran right now is incredibly aggressive.
Yes, the broader policy is the key context here. President Trump has issued a very stark ultimatum regarding Iran's nuclear program.
What's the message?
The message is simple. Reach an agreement to halt the nuclear program, or face severe consequences.
And the specific language used in that ultimatum was heavy. It was reach an agreement or face very tough measures, like last time.
And everybody in the region knows exactly what, last time means.
The June bombings.
Exactly. It is a thinly veiled, direct threat of renewed military action.
So let's just look at the board state here for a second. You have the U.S. president actively threatening a repeat of a massive bombing campaign.
Right.
And simultaneously, you have Iran rushing to buy advanced missiles that are specifically designed to sink the exact ships that would be launching those bombs.
It creates a classic textbook security dilemma.
Explain that for the listener.
A security dilemma is when each side takes a step to make themselves feel safer. So the U.S. threatens military force to stop a nuclear program, which makes them feel safer.
But that makes Iran feel less safe.
Exactly.
Right.
So Iran buys carrier-killer missiles to stop the U.S. force, which makes Iran feel safer.
But then the U.S. Navy feels incredibly vulnerable, which leads to further escalation. It's a spiral.
A very dangerous spiral. And we also have to talk about the legal framework here, because this deal isn't just politically controversial.
Right, the sanctions.
Technically, it is illegal under the current international sanctions regime.
Walk us through that landscape, because honestly, the sanctions seem to turn on and off like a light switch over the last decade. It's hard to keep track.
It is very confusing. So let's recap the history real quick. There was a United States-pushed UN embargo imposed way back in 2006.
And that prevented this exact kind of heavy weapon transfer.
Yes. Then the 2015 nuclear deal happened, and those specific sanctions were suspended.
Okay.
But then the Trump administration withdrew from that nuclear deal in 2018.
Right, I remember that.
And crucially, the sanctions were officially reimposed last September, entirely as a fallout from the June war.
So as of right now, February 2026, this missile sale blatantly defies the reimposed embargo.
If they actually deliver the missiles, yes, it is a direct violation. And as the experts point out, this sale drastically complicates U.S. efforts to contain both Iran's missile program and their nuclear ambitions.
Because it undermines the diplomatic leverage the U.S. is trying to use.
Completely.
Okay, you just used the magic word again.
Yes.
Deliver.
Yeah.
Because we need to be really crystal clear with the listener about where this deal actually stands at this exact moment. Are these CM-302 missiles currently sitting on a launch pad in Tehran right now?
No, they are not. And this is perhaps the most important nuance in the entire source material.
Okay.
The deal is described as close to being finalized. The actual signing of the paperwork is imminent.
It's imminent.
But, and it is a massive but, the delivery date is completely unknown.
And we don't know the price or the quantity either, right?
Correct. Those logistical details are still entirely black boxes to the intelligence community.
Why does the quantity matter so much in this scenario? One carrier killer sounds bad enough.
Because naval defense, at the end of the day, is a numbers game. It's all about saturation.
Saturation of the defense systems.
Exactly. If Iran only buys, say, 10 of these missiles, a U.S. carrier strike group can probably handle that. They have enough interceptors in their tubes to shoot down 10 incoming targets, even fast ones.
But if they buy 100 or 200...
Then you can overwhelm the Aegis combat system. You just fire 20 or 30 at once. You know most of them will get shot down.
But you just hope one gets through the net.
And with a warhead like the CM-302 carries, one is all you need to take a multi-billion-dollar ship completely out of the fight.
Wow.
So the scale of the deal will absolutely determine the true scale of the threat.
But let's go back to that unknown delivery date for a second, because that creates a very strange, almost surreal situation.
How so?
Well, the deal is happening, the paperwork is being signed in secret, but the physical hardware isn't actually there yet. It feels like a massive logistical risk for Beijing to even try and ship these right now.
It is an incredible risk. Think about the physical logistics involved. How do you get a massive shipment of heavy supersonic missiles from China to Iran when the U.S. Navy is currently swarming the Persian Gulf on high alert?
Right, you can't exactly just put them in a FedEx box.
No, you can't. You have to load them onto a massive cargo ship, or you have to fly them in on heavy military transport planes.
And any Chinese military transport heading into that specific region right now is going to be intensely tracked.
Tracked, monitored, and potentially hailed or intercepted by the U.S. military.
So if China puts those missiles on a boat right now, they're risking a direct physical confrontation with the United States Navy.
A total blockade scenario. If the U.S. decides to stop and board a Chinese ship to seize those missiles, that is an immediate international incident between two nuclear superpowers.
It's a nightmare scenario that surely neither side actually wants.
Exactly. So we are stuck in this very strange strategic limbo.
The danger is immediate, the tension is sky high, but the weapon itself is essentially missing.
Right. But I would argue the danger isn't just the future arrival of these missiles. The profound danger is the current setup itself.
Explain that.
You have a U.S. naval force sitting there right now. The deal is being finalized right now. The diplomatic friction is at an absolute peak. The mere public news of this deal raises the temperature in a room that is already dangerously overheating.
It really feels like everyone is just holding their breath. The U.S. is waiting for Iran to blink on the nuclear ultimatum. Iran is rushing to get these game-changing weapons to protect themselves.
And China is sitting back, deciding exactly how far they want to push the envelope.
And remember, the sources explicitly state that the U.S. fleet is deployed there, anticipating a potential attack.
They aren't just doing routine patrols, they're on a war footing. The sailors on those ships are quite literally sleeping with their boots on.
So bringing this all together, what does this actually mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about a specific missile deal halfway across the world?
You should care because it represents a fundamental shift in the global balance of power.
How superpowers interact.
Yes. For decades, the U.S. Navy could operate in the Persian Gulf with relative impunity. They had the biggest ships, the best radar, the absolute best planes.
But technology acts as a great equalizer.
It does, the democratization of lethality.
That's a great term for it.
The CM-302 is an expensive piece of hardware, sure, but compared to the cost of an American aircraft carrier, it is pennies.
Right. If a relatively inexpensive Chinese missile can realistically threaten a multi-billion-dollar U.S. vessel,
And the lives of the 5,000 American sailors on board?
then the political and human cost of intervention goes up dramatically. The risk goes through the roof.
It forces the American president to stop and ask, is this strike actually worth it?
Which is exactly the hesitation that Iran is trying to buy with this deal.
Precisely. They are buying deterrence. They are buying a high-tech insurance policy against another June war.
It really highlights how fragile peace, or even just a tense standoff, truly is. One new piece of technology, one secret meeting in Beijing, and the entire strategic board gets completely rearranged.
And we are seeing diplomatic alliances harden in real time. The fact that this deal accelerated so quickly after the U.S. joined the conflict last June shows that U.S. intervention didn't actually scare Iran into submission.
It did the exact opposite.
It pushed them closer to China. It spurred them to upgrade their lethality. That is a brutal lesson in cause and effect that policymakers have to grapple with moving forward.
It's the law of unintended consequences, but played out with supersonic warheads.
Exactly. We won the tactical fight last June, but we might have inadvertently created a strategic nightmare for ourselves this February.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Okay.
We have spent a lot of time focusing on the hardware today. The Mach 3 speed, the 180-mile range, the terrifying sea-skimming capability.
It's Bex.
Right. But let's go back to that one crucial detail. The delivery date is unknown. I just can't stop thinking about that.
It really is the crucial missing puzzle piece here.
Right. So if the delivery date is unknown, and the regional tensions are this incredibly high right now, it makes you wonder something.
What's that?
Is this deal actually about physically deploying these weapons anytime soon? Or is the mere announcement of the deal a weapon in itself?
Oh, that is a fascinating question.
Think about it. By leaking this news, or perhaps just allowing it to be known through back channels that the deal is imminent, China and Iran are sending a massive signal.
A psychological signal.
Exactly. They are telling the United States, if you push us too hard on this nuclear ultimatum, if you try to launch another bombing campaign like last June, the next time won't be like the last time.
Because next time, we will have the CM-302 waiting for now.
Right. It's brilliant psychological warfare. It forces U.S. military planners to account for a devastating capability that might not even be physically present in the theater yet.
Do you risk the entire fleet on the assumption that the cargo ships haven't arrived yet?
Or do you back off just in case they have? It introduces a massive amount of doubt.
And doubt is a remarkably powerful thing in naval warfare. It buys time.
And right now, with the Trump administration's nuclear ultimatum ticking down, time is the one thing Iran desperately needs.
So the question remains, is it a bluff or is it a promise?
And is that signal, that threat of a carrier killer, enough to make the U.S. back off before the next war begins? That is the heavy question hanging over the waters of the Persian Gulf right now.
And the answer to that question might very well determine what the entire world looks like by March.
Yeah, it's a rapidly developing story, and it's one we will be watching very, very closely. Because if those missiles move, the whole map changes. That's it for this deep dive into the supersonic shift. Stay curious, stay informed, and we will catch you on the next one.